Hi everyone, you've gotten to the Papa's Kitchen again without the Papa. I'm Nana, Susan, and I'm going to tell you today the story of my childhood. I had so many people ask for stories of where I grew up and when I was a kid because I grew up on the mission field. My parents were missionaries to Africa. They answered the call early on in their life. They knew even when they got married that they would one day go to the mission field. Well, about a year into their marriage, they had an opportunity to go to Kenya, East Africa. That was before there were jets, so they actually had to take a ship across the Atlantic to Africa. It took a month, and my mom always tells the story that they didn't have anything to do on the ship except read books because they had a library and play games. The only game she knew how to play that was on the ship was checkers, and so my dad was a big game player. The only problem was every time he played a game, he was one of those game players that had to win, or else he'd make you play again. And so the whole way they played checkers, and he never let her win one time. And she tells that story all the time, giving an excuse why she hates games. I love games. I took after my dad. So we played games all the time in Africa as missionary kids. My parents lived at the beginning so primitively that they actually even took pickups out to the plains in East Africa and shot their own meat. So they ate all kinds of things. Here's a picture of my mom and her missionary friend cooking outside the meat they had just caught. Don't you love their outfits? And then my dad just loved being with the Kenyans. He tells the story that there is a universal language. And if you don't know what else to say, if you use this word, everyone around the world will understand you. And that was the word hallelujah. It is the same in every language. He tells the story of getting a flat tire one day on the road, and this guy stopped to help him, and they couldn't speak each other's language. And finally, my dad just said, hallelujah. And the guy responded like, yes, I know that word. And he was real friendly after that, fixed my dad's tire and got him back on the road. My parents lived in the bush where it was difficult to get to any city. And when they went to Kenya, my mom had had a miscarriage of a type that the doctors told her that she would probably never be able to have kids. So they didn't expect to get pregnant right away. Well, they were there about a year when mom found out she was pregnant, and they would go into town for her checkups, which was an all-day trip in a car. Well, wouldn't you know it, when I came along in June, it was rainy season. And the story goes that my dad, because the roads were out because of the rain, my dad had to ride a bicycle to the river. Then they had a bucket that they had on a line across the river. He got in the bucket. They pulled him across the river. And then somebody picked him up and drove him into town where he got in an airplane. And this is the picture of him standing by the plane. And he flew back with the pilot to the village, picked my mom up, and took her back to town. And a week later, I was born. So obviously, she was in false labor, which she thought she was going to have me. This way, she made it in plenty time. Of course, I'm the first one of the family, so they had a lot of pictures of me. When I was 18 months, my brother Phil came along. I would call him my BB. This was our life. We were an enigma. We were the only white children around for miles and miles. And everywhere my mom and dad went, they took us. But there would always be crowds of people around wanting to look at these white babies. When I was 2, my parents came back to the States. They actually went down to Mississippi. And during that time, they helped plant a church. They helped in another church. And it was their season of just learning how to pastor and minister to people even more. When I was about 8 years old, my parents got a call from their main church in Michigan that had sent them originally to Kenya to see if they wanted to go on another mission trip. Back then, people didn't just go on mission trips and come back because travel was not that easy. So when you committed to go on the mission field, you committed to live there for at least 3 years. My mom and dad prayed about it and felt that was the thing for them to do. At this time, though, they had 3 kids. I was about 8. My brother Phil was 18 months younger than me, and then my brother John was 18 months younger than him. And we packed up. There was a big article even in the Detroit News about this family that was willing to go and live their life in Africa. Nigeria was known as one of the most dangerous places to go because malaria was rampant. They had poisonous snakes. It was in the tropics where we were going, right in the Midwest. In fact, when we went in 1960, they just then got their independence from England. And so it was a big celebration. I have a hat even that says One Nigeria on it. When we went, we lived in a little village about 30 miles from the nearest town. And this is the house we lived in. It was a 14-room house, no halls. Every room went from room to room to room. It was very expansive, no screens, no electricity at all. The first thing my dad did is he put screens in the windows to keep the bugs out because we had a lot of bugs, a lot of mosquitoes. We slept under nets, even with the screens. We had to sleep under nets. This is a picture of us in front of our new house. My dad, because they had lived in Kenya and had seen what you could do for running water when you didn't have electricity, decided to build these cement towers with cement blocks. You can see our house was made pretty much of cement. And then they put a barrel on top of that, and someone would climb up there every day, fill the barrel with water, and then they had a pipe that would run into the bathroom. And we didn't have flushing toilets, but we did have running water where we could take a bath. The problem with that is that the water was always cold. When we wanted hot water, we would actually have to make it hot. They would put it on the fire and heat the water that way. So that was the only way we had hot water. But being a kid, you just don't realize these things. The most inconvenient thing for me as an 8-year-old kid was having to use a pail at night if I had to go to the bathroom because we only had an outhouse. During the day, it was okay, but at night, we had snakes, we had other critters around, and it just wasn't convenient or safe probably to go out to the outhouse at night. So my one brother, and I won't tell you which one, had the job of emptying the pot every morning. I always felt bad for him, but not bad enough to offer to do it. What my mom and dad did basically is they did start a Bible school with 2 more missionaries that came out to Nigeria from that local church in Detroit. Bethesda Missionary Temple, it was called at the time. They would go every Sunday to a church and speak for them. And it was translated from English to their local language. We never did learn their language because the dialect changed about every 5 to 6 miles. Even their trade language was broken English. Here's my dad they honored him as a honorary chief, so they dressed him all up in his chief outfit. But this was pretty much what our life was. They called us Owibo, which means basically a black-skinned person who's been burned and their skin is peeled off. Because when their skin is burned, it comes back white. So that was our life. We were the minority, totally. But I learned a lot from that. It was difficult because you didn't have everybody around you like you. But it didn't mean that you couldn't have relationships with people at all. You had to work harder at helping those people that were in the majority understand you. And so I would have to work harder at friendships because I was in a minority. And I understood that right from the beginning. My parents were so good with the people that were there and with teaching us how to respect every nationality, and how to live with them too in peace and harmony. That's all it was all about, because we came to bring the gospel of Jesus Christ, which was a gospel of peace. There were a lot of snakes, as I told you. Here's a picture of one of them. We had cobras, we had puff adders, we had pythons, we had tons of lizards everywhere, and they were the black lizards with the red tail and the red head. We had different pets. Our main pet was a Cocker Spaniel Terrier mixture, and her name was Sally. And she actually was a blessing to us because she would sniff out snakes before we would even see them. Cobras, 6 feet long. She would catch them in the middle, shake them with her head till they were dead. Her bark was a specific bark when she had a cobra. So we'd know, Sally has a cobra. So we'd run out, watch her, and then we'd help kill the snake before the snake bit her. She didn't get bit, she got spit at. So cobras, they stand up. Their hood goes like this, the hood of their head, and they spit. And their whole purpose is to blind them so they can either get away or catch them to eat them. Well, Sally got spit a couple of times. It never deterred her. And then my dad would take her and he'd pour milk in her eyes to try kind of neutralize the venom that was spit in her eyes. But she lived a long time. She lived the whole time we were there, and she died by getting hit by a car, which was so sad. So then we kept one of her puppies and raised that puppy for the last few years we were in Nigeria. We also had a pet at one time of a tiny deer. He was a miniature deer. My brother Phil had him. A dyker. I don't know if you've ever heard of one of those. D-Y-K-R, I think it is. And we kept him till he started butting us so much that we had to get rid of him. He grew horns and he was pretty lethal then. But then we also had a parrot, and the parrot lived quite a while. We named it Chester after Chester in Gunsmoke, if any of you are old enough to remember that. We also had a monkey. The monkey lived only a few months. It was really hard to keep monkeys alive, we were told. When we got him, they would get pneumonia very easily, and this is what happened to this monkey. They were also not the best of pets. They'd get fleas and all that, so my mom was pretty happy when that monkey died. We loved spending time at this river. This river is called the Ethiopian River, and you can look it up on maps today, even on Google Maps, and you can see where it is one of a kind. It's crystal clear, swift flowing, like 78 degrees all the time, spring fed, and we lived 5 miles from it. So we would go swim there every afternoon. After the first couple years we were there, my mom got pregnant again with their 4th child, and that was my little brother Steve. So we went back to the States for a year. That would have been my 5th grade, and I did 5th grade in the States. Then we came back, and Steve actually grew up on the mission field. Here's a picture of us all. He grew up loving bananas, shoving bananas in his mouth all the time. The older I get, the more I appreciate how much my mom and dad gave their lives to the Lord and to do his will. My dad would always say, the safest place to be is in the middle of God's will. And that's exactly what he determined he would do with his family. One of the highlights of our time there in Nigeria was to go visit this place, and it was Enugu, which was in the eastern part of Nigeria. We were in the Midwest, and then the West was on the other side. And Enugu was so different. It looked a lot more like Kenya does. The temperature was cooler, the elevation was higher. Where we lived was in the middle of rubber trees and humidity, and it got cool 1 month out of the year, and the coolest it ever got was in the high 60s. But this place was amazing to us, and we would go every year for a vacation, and the dentist was there. Several years into our second term there, my dad had a terrible accident. We had a Volkswagen bus. What happened is he fell asleep at the wheel and he ran right into a tree. And he had almost taken my brother Phil with him on this ministry trip he went to, and he decided at the last minute not to. And as you see, My brother Phil probably would not have survived. My dad had a concussion, and that was it. That's all that happened to him. About 1967, Nigeria fell into some real problems. They had a civil war. It was a war against the East, the West against the East, and we were in the Midwest, and we were right in the middle. So for 6 weeks, we were totally cut off from all communication. During that time, all the missionaries that were a part of our mission team happened to be there at the same time. We stayed on our compound and didn't go into town for probably several weeks. I don't remember exactly, but I do remember that every morning the missionary adults would get together and pray and ask the Lord, should we leave or should we stay? Because the word was that all the missionaries were leaving. And every morning they felt to stay, that they would be safer to stay. So for 6 weeks we stayed. The people at home didn't know whether we were alive or dead. But God provided for us. And after about a week or so, the adult men on our compound decided to go into town to see what they could find, because we were running out of supplies as far as food supplies and petrol. And by that time we had petrol is gasoline for any of you who don't know. By that time we had a generator, and so we needed diesel fuel to run the generator. So they went into town and they went to this American oil base. They had sent most of their people home. They were shocked to see that families were still there because most of the missionaries had gone home. So first of all, they asked them, well, where are you? You know, we're 30 miles out, and can you use anything? Do you need anything? Well, of course, we need groceries. And if you have any, then we'd be glad to buy them, you know, whatever you have. And they were so kind. They opened their doors, their storeroom doors. They said, you take whatever you need. And what are you doing for entertainment? Do you have anything for the kids? How many kids do you have? And at the time we had the 4 in my family and 2 girls from one other family, and then 2 adult boys from the other family. And so they said, well, you need something. We've got movies. Do you like Doris Day movies? They sent us movies and a projector and a screen. And so we put it up and we would watch movies. God took care of us. We ended up closing up our mission and moving into one of the towns, into Sapele, and got an apartment there and spent our last several years there, 2 years basically. So my childhood was memories of swimming every day, playing games together all the time. I had a wonderful childhood. We were homeschooled. We did have a teacher come out for a little while to help my mom. And Aunt Jean was a wonderful person. She lived with us for the time she was there. So if you've stuck with me to the end of this family slideshow, so to speak, thank you very much. But let me leave you with a couple of thoughts about what I believe my childhood did to prepare me for my adulthood now. One of the things it did was give me a real appreciation of a worldwide view. So many Americans have never left America. I grew up in another country. I can remember my dad saying, you don't really know what it's like to be a missionary until you come with a non-return ticket. And that's so true. You can go visit a country, think you fall in love with it, but you move there and try to live there, it's a whole nother story. Some people feel much more comfortable in other countries. I realized I was an American. Every time we would come home, I would want to fall on the ground and kiss the ground. I just loved America. So I knew who I was. That's what it gave me, is an appreciation for who I was, but yet an appreciation that there's a whole world out there and everyone is important. And everyone, though they may be different, they're very much alike. I can travel to all kinds of countries now, and the similarities, I'll say to Jerry, wow, this looks just like Nigeria, or this looks like Australia, or this is just like the plains of Iowa. I also have a real appreciation for family life and for the cohesiveness of a family. And my heart really goes out to people who didn't have that as a child. It's beyond your control because you're a child. You have no control over that. But I do believe that God can restore that. And if you get yourself close to a family or a couple who have a marriage or have a family that is similar to what you really want, you can implement that now. It's never too late. It's never too late to live right. It's never too late to forgive your kids or forgive your parents or whatever the case may be. There is good that can come out of every life and every situation. There are a lot of missionary kids that had a hard time adjusting when they came home. But honestly, I attribute to my parents, to my church, to my brothers, the easiness I had with coming back home and fitting into society, even though I was raised on the mission field. I'll leave you with one last picture. It's of me at 18 because I came home when I was 18. And obviously you can see I was a pretty happy person. Thanks for tuning in today. You didn't know what you were going to get, but I hope you enjoyed this. And come back next week. Have a wonderful weekend.